Is AI taking over the gaming industry? Are concept artists out on the streets forced to draw wacky caricatures to make ends meet? Or are they all just going to start an NSFW Gaming R34 Patreon account? News at 11. And while we're at it, tell me whose side you're on. Are you with the anti-AI activists thinking genAI should be banned from all gaming development use? Or are you with the game developers themselves willing to use such tools in their work with no holds barred? Or perhaps you're a middle-of-the-road type, seeing genAI having applications in various game development cycles, but with some limitations. So why not join me, Jarek Defiler, in looking into the concepts of generative AI use in video game development and the issues that have arisen since their recent implementation. So sit back, relax, put your feet up, and let's take a look into generative AI use in video game development breakdown. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Jarek Defiler, the Patient Gamer, here with a bit of a different video for you today. Woo! No game review or first impression, sorry. I wanted to talk about AI in the gaming industry. More accurately, AI in game development. Specifically, generative AI. This has come more to my attention over the past few months, mainly due to Swen Vincke of the amazing and ever-sensual Larian Studios being caught in a bit of an online social media frenzy among some anti-AI activists, or AAAs as I like to call them. This was due to his discussion during a couple interviews where he noted that Larian Studios uses generative AI in some stages of their development cycle, specifically in that of conceptualizing and brainstorming. So this is kind of old news at this point, but I thought I'd do a quick little video giving my thoughts on Sven's words and Larian's use of AI, and just the use of AI during game development in general, yeah. Now, full disclosure, full transparency, I have a blatant bias here in that in my day job, I do in fact work in artificial intelligence. I have for over 2 years now, partly in that of the medical field, but also training LLMs for things like logic, reasoning, creative writing, video and audio, companion functionality, etc. Lots of different things. I've also dabbled in indie video game development, albeit many moons ago, but I do understand on a much lesser and amateur scale the complexities and struggles of video game development. Lastly, I am a Larian Studios fanboy. They are my favorite gaming studio of all time, as they have made my second and favorite games of all time in that of Divinity Original Sin 2 and Baldur's Gate 3. And Swen Vincke is a man that I truly respect and appreciate in the gaming industry space. Larian is perhaps the most customer-friendly, developer-friendly, and just overall gamer-friendly studio out there these days, and that's heavily due to Swen Vincke's leadership. So take everything I say here with a bucket of salt as I'm attempting to be objective, but that can only go so far as we are who we are, know what I mean? But before we get into it, please be sure to like the video, share with your fellow gamers, and subscribe if you'd be so kind. Really appreciate it as it does help out a little channel like me. Thanks! Okay, for those who aren't familiar with the controversy regarding Swen Vincke's interviews, there was a great deal of backlash from anti-AI activists claiming that Larian Studios uses or has used generative AI to make their art and therefore they are now pariahs. Now, what exactly is an anti-AI activist in this regard? These are people that are vehemently against the use of AI in most, if not all, creative spaces. Things like art, graphics, design, music, writing, etc. I say creative spaces because I don't really see them protesting things like AI being used in programming languages, the financial sector, data processing, the medical field, law, or the like. It could just be me in a bubble, but all I see online tends to revolve around the creative and artistic spaces. So Sven's first interview with GameSpot, which was released on April 25th of 2025, had some questions about generative AI being used during the development cycle. Why the controversy suddenly popped up in December? Mainly due to the second interview, but this first one somewhat kicked off the discussions overall. I'll link the video in the description so you can take a look at it yourself, but in my biased and pro-AI opinion, I think his answer is completely fine. He basically states that generative AI is used conceptually or for automating tedious, repetitive tasks that developers really don't want to do, such as motion capture screening, voice editing, or reusing animations on various models, things like that. Sven was also very explicit in that these uses will not be in the shipped version of the game, but just a means to speed up the development process. They want to use a tractor trailer rather than a horse-drawn cart, so to speak. But at the end of the day, the developer is still at the wheel. Or brains. The second interview that really set off the backlash was with Bloomberg, specifically Jason Schreier, where Sven states that they use generative AI to do concept art, placeholding and editing for writing, and to help accelerate whiteboxing, which is early stage level design where you have just these geometric shapes in the game space that have no models or textures or visual assets of any kind. But again, Sven also explicitly states, there's no generated assets that you're gonna see in the game, and I don't think he's lying here. Larian and Sven in particular have a history of strong loyalty to their developers. They don't do massive crunch times, they don't lay off developers once a game ships, and they ultimately make games that they want to play. This is a game developer's dream job, and we all profit from it as gamers as well. But unfortunately, none of that matters. The blood was in the water and the sharks were a-swimming. The anti-AI activists jumped onto Larian like a pack of wolves onto a maimed lamb smothered in Cholula, and the activist gaming zeitgeist was a flurry of attacks on Swen and the studio over the course of mid to late December and going into January. It got to the point that during an AMA on Reddit's r/games, Swen stated that going forward, Larian will refrain from using genAI tools during concept art development. To me, this is disappointing. You generally never should give in to these people. You offer an inch, they'll take a mile sort of thing. I don't think Larian did anything wrong here. Quite frankly, I don't think most gamers think they did anything wrong here. And it was very clear that they relegated generative AI to the conceptual and brainstorming phase of the development process. They weren't using it to replace artists. The artists were just using it as another tool. But now they capitulated to a very, what I assume to be loud minority of anti-AI activists that will just see their concept artists having to do more work that was otherwise unnecessary. Damn shame. Now from what I see, there's two major arguments coming from the anti-AI activists. One is that AI will replace their jobs and they'll become obsolete. I don't think that's a particularly strong argument personally. This defense isn't anything new, but technology is constantly advancing and jobs become obsolete all the time. We don't really see lamplighters in the streets anymore now that we have electricity, for example. And at the end of the day, you are not entitled to anyone's money. If a company doesn't want to hire you, that's their prerogative. I mean, I've had people accost me in the comments for using AI art in my thumbnails, stating that I should use real artists instead. But I'm not a rich guy. I don't make money from the tubes of you. I do this as a hobby, and I have a wife and a 2-year-old daughter to support, as I am the sole income earner in my household. I do not have the funds to throw a couple $100s at an artist every time I need a thumbnail. As such, AI is a great tool for someone like me and allows me to easily continue making content as I have little to no artistic skills myself. So I don't really buy that argument. It comes off as pretentious and entitled, two things I don't really care for. But that said, there is another argument the AAAs bring forth that I think holds some water. That is the supposed theft that generative AI is committing upon the artistic community. For those who aren't entirely familiar with how generative AI learns, the model takes a vast amount of data sets and analyzes it, recognizing patterns and relationships among any given form of data. Now, the sketchy part is, the data sets are just public information. They're books, websites, videos, music, images, art, and audio found online, all manner of information that is just out there in the internet ether. The models then take everything they've learned and produce their own original work based on all this data. So they're kind of weirdly co-opting other people's intellectual property in order to improve themselves. So that image that Grok makes or ChatGPT may have similarities to thousands upon thousands of artists' style and work, but it's all mixed in and therefore is too convoluted to pin down any given artist in the result. It's as if you'd go to a library and take a word of Shakespeare, a word of Lord Byron, a word of Veda Vyasa, a word of Jane Austen, a word of Homer, a word of George R.R. Martin, and so on and so forth with other authors, and then write a short story or novel using that conglomeration. This argument makes much more sense to me. But the thing is, the models aren't breaking into the AAA's personal hard drives and ripping sketches out of their PDF files. They train on anything and everything that is available to everyone else online. Are the anti-AI activist types livid when a young artist in middle school hops onto their DeviantArt page and gets inspiration from their favorite furry inflation artists and adopts some of their style into their own works? Probably not, you know. In fact, they might consider it to be flattering. The difference is that AI models can learn these styles on a scale that the human brain can't even fathom. So it's doing what many of us do every day in a sense, being inspired by the works of others, but it just does it insanely faster, like cranked up to 1,000,010. Does that make it right? Well, no, but does it make it wrong? I guess it can be argued that the production speed and sheer amount of output the AI models can produce is a problem, as no human can pump out thousands of images a second, so there's no chance for a human to compete, but it still is kind of doing what people have done over the course of humankind. It learns, it adapts, it creates. And at the end of the day, it's not going anywhere. AI is only getting stronger and faster and more accurate. Sad to say, but it's pretty much a losing battle at this point. You can't stop it, doesn't make it right, but I think the anti-AI activists would be better off putting their energy into more productive means, like maybe lobbying their congressmen for AI regulation in regard to IP issues, instead of accosting studios on social media for simply using a tool that is available to everyone. So how does all this tie into the gaming industry now? Is it a huge problem that studios are now being exposed for using generative AI in their games? Like everything else in life, I'd say yes and no. Personally, I don't think using generative AI is an issue by default. I don't see how Larian used it to be an offense to the players or artists, as they solely relegated it to the conceptual phase. The artistic community may take offense, but they aren't entitled to Larian's money, so they don't have to hire them, and they aren't showing any signs of laying off concept artists due to genAI. In fact, I believe during that time period when the supposed scandal broke, Larian had just hired on several new concept artists, or were looking to hire new concept artists. I just don't see a problem here. That said, we are seeing many studios, even big studios, looking at you, Treyarch, directly using AI-generated assets in-game. I'm not even sure if I'm fully against studios doing this outside of the fact that the supposed art just sucks most of the time. AI-generated art is generally not very good and has lots of issues, but if a studio wants to use it, that's on them so long as they're transparent about it, I suppose. I personally won't be bothering with their game, most likely because I'm not interested in lazy, poor quality development, you know? This is particularly egregious when the studio lies about it. But if some indie dev, working out of their home office wants to make their own game with AI art because they can't really afford to hire artists or they don't have the talent to do themselves like me, I don't really see a problem with that, to be honest. It's a great tool for them. Thing is, there will undoubtedly be a time when AI is so good that it may even surpass human ability when it comes to art. Maybe. There are things that makes us human that you just can't emulate, but at that point, will people still have the same thoughts, thinking it shouldn't be utilized, or will it be the opposite and people will prefer it given its quality? Maybe it'll just be accepted for what it is, another tool in the game developer's arsenal. Only time will tell. But although I'm all for developer freedom and choosing what they put in their games and what they don't put in their games, if you're a big AAA studio and you can afford all these concept artists and whatnot, I don't think it's the best idea from a business standpoint and a quality standpoint to use AI-generated assets in your game. You can afford to hire real artists that can make just far superior work. Also, you have to keep in mind, AI has been used in the gaming industry for quite some time now. Years, maybe even a decade or more in some shape or form, just not to the chatbot level we see today. I think for the most part, it's just another tool to be used by the developers so long as it's not replacing them at the end of the day, because so far nothing can beat quality, innovative human ingenuity. I'm mentioning this so many times because I just want to pound that point home. And for the anti-AI activists that continue to die on this hill, I probably would be more respecting of their opinion if they spoke out against AI that wasn't just in their field. Like, I have yet to see an artist complain about AI being used to enhance code or strategize marketing campaigns. All things that could threaten programmers or marketing directors' jobs, I suspect most of the anti-AI activists use LLMs for all manner of things outside of their field without batting an eye because it just doesn't affect them. We're all guilty of that, I suppose. But it's hard for me to sympathize at times, to be honest. And again, like I said before, AI isn't going anywhere. This is very much something that one should just accept at this point and learn to adapt and maybe come up with some solutions that will utilize AI in a fair and balanced manner. Perhaps it's all just moving too fast and people are simply scared. I don't know, the whole Skynet scenario is a frightening concept, but I suspect this would be more of a decades-long takeover that would find us slowly integrating it into our lives to the point where we're all some AI fleshbot hybrid cyborg type deal. But in all seriousness, I'm not too worried about it. I find it more exciting and innovating than apocalyptic, but I do understand people's qualms. Now I want to know what you guys think. Do you find generative AI an acceptable tool to use in game development? Would you think it's acceptable in any stage or just conceptually? Or are you against it completely? And if so, why? What solution would you recommend to game developers that are on the fence? Let me know in the comments, yeah. Anyways, just thought I'd give my 2 cents on the matter, as I think this is an interesting topic that's not going away anytime soon. So, thanks for watching my humble little video. This has been Jarek Defiler, contemplating on creating an indie game using AI to help me code. You all have a good morning, evening, or night, depending on where you are. And watch out for them laser drones.